Ben, really, what is going on, my man?
What's up, brother? How you doing, man? Thanks
Dude,
for having me on.
yeah, dude, my pleasure. Absolutely. Thank you for joining us here on the Next Level Agents podcast. I appreciate you taking the time out of your schedule today and sharing with us a little bit of your journey in the real estate world.
Definitely, man. I'm looking forward to it.
All right, so Ben, for those of us who don't have an experience of you, tell me a little bit about how you got into real estate and what was your start. And like I want to hear it all, man. We're gonna go through it all because you've got a fun story, a
Cool.
really interesting background, really interesting business model, in my opinion. And so I want to pull it all out of you today.
Awesome. Yeah. So at 15 years old, the show Flip This House started to gain popularity, and I watched that and I saw these guys making a ton of money, and I was like, that's what I want to do, man. That's awesome. And so that kind of got me interested in real estate. And at the same time, I was very fortunate. My best friend's dad was a real estate investor. He had a lot of rental properties.
Nice.
I kind of had a rich dad, poor dad experience. If there's any Robert Kiyosaki fans out there, my dad, 27 years in the military, multiple tours to Iraq and Afghanistan, an amazing man, but he went to work and worked hard every day. And I saw that like he was working hard, but he wasn't gaining the traction that I saw my best friend's dad, who had 30 rental properties, and they got to travel the world and do some really cool stuff. And, when I looked at that, for me, the life that I wanted to live, I was drawn to that. And, I have an amazing amount of respect for anyone who serves their country. I don't want to belittle that in any way.
Yeah.
For me, the freedom, the financial freedom that investing and owning real estate provided was pretty exciting. So came up with this crazy idea. It's like 2006, 2007. I have a little bit of construction experience. I'm like, Dad, I'm going to college. I want to buy a house. I want to live in it and rent out the bedrooms, which now it's known as house hacking. I don't think it really had a title back then. And so I convinced them to co-sign on a loan, and I bought a house near the University of Arizona. So any Wildcat fans out there, bear down. So I bought a house that had homeless people living in it the day we got the keys. It's kind of the only thing that my family could afford with the down payment, as I was getting ready to go to college. And I spent that whole first summer going into my freshman year fixing up this house with my younger brothers and my dad. Learned how to put on roof, learned how to do new tile, kitchen, everything. And it was really cool because 2007, the market was on fire, and we fixed it up, and the real estate agent who sold it to me showed up one day and was like, we could sell this and you can make $50,000. And, I knew everything in the world at that time. And I was like, yeah, real estate only goes up. So not going to sell it now. I'll sell it next year. And that was 2008 in Arizona. And you kind of know what happened from there.
What happened there. Yeah.
So that was tough. But what I learned from that was, because I had invested for cash flow, my 3 roommates covered my mortgage. $400 per room, $1,200 a month total. My mortgage was $1,150. I'm living rent free. So although I lost a ton of equity in the house, I didn't lose the property. And that was one of my first big lessons in real estate investing, is you want to invest for cash flow. So real estate, bottom of the market. And then I was fortunate enough I could start buying properties and making deals and building companies. And so that's the journey I've been on ever since.
Dude, that's awesome. So, all right, because you and I didn't know this when we first met, but I found out later that a friend of mine, Jerry, who I grew up with, and you knew through law school, right? Like, so how does a guy, how do you end up, so you go to U of A, like, how do you end up in law school just to come back to the real estate? Like, what was there is there a story in there? Where does that show up in this journey?
Yeah. So I was always very entrepreneurial, and my mom jokes about it because there was phone calls and visits where I'd be so mad because I just wanted to drop out of school and do real estate. And I think because I came into the industry at the very worst time and I saw how dismal it could get, I wanted backup plans. I wanted other exit strategies if a career in real estate didn't work. And so I think that was lesson number 2 I took away, is you want multiple exit strategies when you're investing and just for yourself personally. So school to me kind of became this backup plan, and I wanted to take that as far as I could. It never got as much attention as it probably should. It was always kind of a back burner because I was flipping houses and running companies. Jerry will attest to that if you talk to him about my attendance record in law school. But
he did mention that one time over
yeah,
coffee. He did maybe say that the attendance record wasn't awesome.
it wasn't great, but I got through and I finished. And the whole reason for that at the time was my companies weren't in a place where I was comfortable saying this is a full-time career for the rest of my life. Right. I think it is. I'm passionate. I love it. But if 2008 happens again, what do I do? And I wanted to have options. So I did my undergrad in accounting and then went to law school. And both of those have been extremely valuable as we've scaled and grown our business. So I'm in hindsight, I look back and go, man, that was a hard road, but I think it's paying off dividends daily at this point.
I would guarantee it is without question. All right, so I'm going to dig in deeper, but before I do that, give me an idea, like what does your business world look like today? Tell me about your companies, what you're involved in, and then we're going to kind of go backwards a little bit and dig in.
Sure. So headquartered in Tucson, Arizona, that's our hub. We have a residential and commercial brokerage teams in Tucson. We have a property management group, a development and construction company, and then a private equity investment group, all located in Tucson. And then we have an expansion team in Kansas City, Missouri, that's doing acquisitions, development, and investment.
Cool. Now, when you say private equity, tell me about that company.
Yeah, so we're raising capital with through a multitude of different avenues in purchasing commercial buildings, single-family homes, and pretty much anything in between. Anything that makes sense as an investment, we're interested in acquiring. Gotcha.
And I've seen you post a couple pictures recently on your Instagram page about some of the buildings you've taken down in Tucson recently, right? And so those would be part of that. Okay, cool. So I think all of us understand the rest, property management and obviously sales and commercial. We all get what that is. So that's great. So, okay, what year did you get licensed? When did you actually get your real estate license?
Good question. 2014, I believe.
2014. Okay, cool. So
I was running and gunning. I wasn't fully aware that you needed a license to do some of the stuff I was doing. So statute of limitations has passed. I think I'm good with the Department of Real Estate. Once I realized it, I got my license. So.
Okay, cool. So you get your license in 2014. So obviously that's because you were doing some investment stuff, flipping, et cetera. Now you also have a residential sales team at this point. So when did you, I'm going to say the word, when did you slow down enough to realize oh, hey, that's actually a whole silo of business or a whole standalone business that I could be building here because of what I'm doing naturally with the rest of my activities?
Yeah. So I stumbled into brokerage sales. When I look at it, I think I referred probably 20 to 30 million worth of transaction volume to agents because I was doing exactly what you said. I was going so fast. I hadn't slowed down and said, this is a buildable, scalable business. I knew real estate agents. My only interactions with them were the soccer moms who showed houses on Saturday. And I love that. There's nothing wrong with that. I just didn't understand you could build a 7th level business inside of residential real estate sales. And finally, it kind of clicked. I read The Millionaire Real Estate Agent. My mentor, Pete Peterson, showed me the way. And I think you know Pete.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, Pete's an awesome guy.
And he's like, you're leaving $200,000 a year on the table. What are you doing? And I was like, wow, you're right. And so we got the license and we spun that up kind of alongside all of our other businesses.
It's funny you say that. You said Rich Dad Poor Dad earlier. And well, I did, unlike you, I didn't finish college, but I had this professor who kind of became my first mentor. And he ended up teaching a lot of classes, not just in business, but on real estate. And he brought in a speaker one time, and the speaker was another investor, real estate investor. And he made some sort of comment about why would I want to be an agent? That's like stepping over dollars to pick up nickels. And I remember that stuck with me. I'm like, that just didn't sound right. But I didn't know any better. I just thought, I don't know about that. And then it wasn't but a couple years later, I found myself with a real estate license, and I quickly realized whoa, this could be a business now. I got a license because I wanted to learn about the business, and I felt like I needed a job. That was my fallback, if you will. And what I realized is, wow, there really can be a whole business here. And so I love that you slowed down. You had somebody, number one, a mentor in your life, Pete, who is a super smart guy and very successful. And God, now I think about it, I got to get Pete on here soon too. But the reality is like you said, okay, I'm going to slow down. And now here's a whole other business. So, all right, so you got that going. What happened next? So you start selling real estate, start building a team. What's that like for you?
Yeah. So early on, even like before I even got my license, I saw this opening in the market for providing start to finish solution for real estate investors, primarily around the university. I had college buddies who wanted places to live. I would meet people who had rentals, and I was like, hey, look, I can rent this for you. I can handle that. By the way, I can fix it up too. And so it just kind of evolved naturally. There was such a demand in each of the businesses that or the services that we were providing, that we were able to build businesses and kind of professionalize the offering that we were putting out there.
That's awesome. So you started kind of like playing matchmaker almost, and then you realized like I could handle all pieces of this, like all these different things I've got my hands in. I could actually my company could have their hand in all of it.
Exactly.
That's awesome, man. So, all right. So tell me about today. So like are you the guy running the residential sales team? Do you have somebody in place there? Where does Ben spend most of his day? And more importantly, forget about man hours, like the hours that you work, but like your brain power. Where does that go?
Yeah. So I'm very fortunate. I have everything that we're talking about that's been built. I don't want to take more than maybe 10% of the credit for it. Like I have amazing team members in all pillars of our company. So we have a residential team leader. His name's Steven Larice, and he runs that segment of our business for us. That's his day in, day out operations. My primary focus right now is on coaching, training, and building up our businesses, making them scalable, and then also in raising and deploying capital. So my passion, what I love most, is negotiating acquisitions.
Nice.
It's fun, and I'm pretty good at it. So I try to spend as much of my brain power on how can we structure a deal that makes it a win for the seller and gives us a ton of upside opportunity for ourselves and for our investors.
Awesome, man. I love hearing that. So that's very cool. So what about the property management business? Like you got someone running that, or does that fall under the residential team?
Yeah, no. So that's a completely separate business. It's really cool. My younger brother actually runs that, Thomas.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, we have 330 units under management currently.
Nice.
And so he has a full team under him. He has another property manager, office admin, and then a showing agent, all under him in his world as we scale that business up.
Okay, so that's a real business right there. All right, so let me ask you this. You don't just get a real estate license and then start doing all of these things.
Sure.
How do you progress into this? Is it because it's typically like
a lot?
Yeah, right, and fast. I'm guessing, right?
Yeah, as quick as you can.
So what is that like? Like, who do you study? Okay, so obviously Pete's a mentor and has helped out along the way, but who else? Like, who are you studying? And what I really want to get to is, and I've seen it, so I'm cheating, the flywheel of success, right? So I would love to hear about that and like your journey into discovering that, because you obviously don't just wake up one day and you realize, oh, well, here's how I'm going to run successfully 5 different businesses, So tell me about that journey.
Yeah, so I think the first thing you have to do is you have to get comfortable with failing and taking risks. I'm very fortunate that like the environment that I grew up in allowed me to be comfortable taking risk, pushing myself, pushing the limits. And it's something that to this day, I strive for and I try to surround myself with. So early on, I saw this pattern of like, if you're around successful people, if you're around people who are pushing the envelope and challenging you, they're challenging you, they're encouraging you, they're supporting you. If you can build an environment like that, magic can happen. And so I consistently try to put myself in the room with people performing 3 years and 5 years ahead of where I currently am in the direction that I want to go. And that just all of a sudden that starts spinning what you said, this flywheel of success. It gets you momentum. And then that really quickly moves into your beliefs. So like, I'm a huge fan of removing limiting beliefs. When I coach with people, when I'm training, that is like the one thing I wish I could go back and do differently is I would have 10x'd all my goals when I was 19 or 20 years old. Because man, I would be in a rocket ship right now, probably going to Mars with Elon Musk if I would have known the power of limiting beliefs. So I think that's like the big start, is just how can you get in the room? And then, you know, it's so much, it's picking up the phone and calling, sending an email, shooting a text. Like, that's hard to do. And people are so afraid of the rejection that they don't ever do it. And for whatever reason, I'm just crazy, and I'll straight go up to you, hey, I want to be in your world. What do I need to do? You know, one of my current mentors right now is David Osborne. And I met him when he came to Tucson to promote his book tour. And I was very fortunate. I got to get coffee with him. And I said, David, you're somebody I want to be around. What do I have to do to get in your world? He made it very easy. He laid out the roadmap for me, and then it was just following it. But I think if I don't ask that question, I lose that relationship. And that has changed so much of how I see the world and what I see as possible.
Absolutely, man. I think that's huge. You know, anytime you have the opportunity to do that, I've always been a big believer as well as in having mentors and just reaching out and asking, and not from a, not take, because I'm sure you get that too. Like, you've got probably agents in your market and probably even from around the country, people that reach out to you and they want something that you have. And I commend people for reaching out, but there's a way to do it. And like, I love the way you approached it with David and with someone that's like, what do I got to do? Like, and how can I bring value to you as well? Because you can't just go, hey, I want to take everything you have so I can get rich, right? And I can grow this mega business, but it's got to be a win-win scenario. Yet then there's this other group of people that they'll never reach out to somebody. They'll never like reach out to you. So, because I guarantee you, Ben, there's someone listening to this podcast today who wants to be where you're at 5 years from now. And whether or not they have the courage to reach out to you is going to be a major determining factor if they can ever get there or not. Not because of you. Like, yeah, you absolutely have a lot you can teach them, but the magic isn't in Ben per se. It's in the willingness to go get in front of you, right? And other people like you. And so I love that you do that, because to me, that's a lesson that as a business person, as just a person in general, like we can't learn it often enough, right? We got to be reminded of that over and over again.
And you're spot on with the value. Like, when I meet somebody, you know, I'm pretty calculating as I try to build these relationships. And the first thing I'm doing when I'm meeting somebody is thinking to myself, how can I provide value? Massive value, little value, doesn't matter. How can I show them that I'm engaged, that I want to be here, I want to be in this room, and I want to bring them value? That could be simply a connection. That could be reaching out and helping them with something. You know, there's thousands of ways to provide value. And if you lead with that, and that's the same with your residential sales business. If you lead with value for your clients, you're going to have more clients. Like, it's that simple.
Yeah. It's funny too. You mentioned David Osborne. Side note, I once paid $500. He doesn't even know it. Basically, so I could have lunch with him.
Yeah, I would every day.
I walked out. I was like, well, that was worth it.
Yeah.
So I donated money to another friend's sponsor, or to his event. I said he was short on cash. Like, they weren't going to be able to make it. And they had David Osborne coming to speak. And I said, here's the deal. I'll give you $500, but at next time we're in Austin, which will be later this year, you're setting up lunch with David Osborne for me. And,
That's awesome.
And it wasn't just me. It was like 5 of us, but man, it was the best. That was some of the best $500 I'd ever spent in my life, because I learned he probably felt like I grilled him, but I had very pointed questions that I wanted to learn from him. And I got them out. It was totally worth the $500. And, you know, the willingness for you to do that, I think, speaks volumes of who you are, and is no wonder why you've been able to accomplish what you've accomplished so far, and probably what you will in the future.
Well, thank you, man. I mean, I think one of the big challenges that so many people have when they start to gain success is the monetary cost to get in the room with the right people starts to grow substantially.
Yeah, it does.
And it's like, when you're just kind of breaking through to that next level, it's really hard to cut that $5,000 check to join the business mentor group, or that $10,000 to go on a trip with the guys that you know are operating so far ahead of you. Overnight, they can change the way you see the world and change your life. And it's kind of sad, but I understand it. And you really have to look past that. You got to do whatever it takes to get in that room.
Yeah, man, I couldn't agree more. All right, so I digress. Let's go back to talk to me about the flywheel of success. What is that?
Definitely. All right, so it's basically this concept that as I've been around successful entrepreneurs and businessmen and women, it's the commonality, the trend that I see they all follow, and it starts with their environment. They make sure they're around people that support them, encourage them, and challenge them, right? Those three things are key. When you have that, it allows the individual to put on goggles, is what I say. It puts on goggles that allow you to see the world differently. It substantially changes your beliefs. Like, you're an entrepreneur, you've had massive success, Kevin. You see the world differently than the average guy walking down the street. You see opportunity where other people don't. And that comes from your environment. It changes your beliefs. When you have beliefs and you feel that you can go on and conquer the world, your work ethic substantially changes and your curiosity increases. You're willing to work 90 hours a day or 90 hours a week because you know it's possible, because you've been around people who have shown you it's possible. That and the curiosity to ask the questions of, you went to lunch with David Osborne. How did you get here? How did you make this happen? Your curiosity spikes substantially. And so when you have those two things rolling, all of a sudden your skills and your relationships drastically improve. They go 10x or 100x. So now you're an individual that has great people around you championing you. You have beliefs where you can do anything. You have a work ethic that allows you to get out of bed way early and stay up way late working on your vision. And oh, by the way, you have these amazing skills and relationships. Well, with those skills and relationships, you start to deliver value. That value to the world, typically it results in monetary compensation. All money is delivering value. We kind of touched on that. And so from there, as you start to deliver value to people, you find your life's purpose. Once you have your life's purpose, the flywheel starts all over. And all it is it's this consistent cycle through from your environment all the way through down to your life's purpose and continues on. That's pretty much, and I have a PDF you can share with the audience that kind of summarizes it way better than I just did, but that's kind of the down and dirty version of my beliefs on success.
Awesome. We'll put the PDF in the show notes and a link to it in the like on the YouTube channel and whatnot. And that's awesome. I really love that. All right, so here we are. We're recording this in late January. It's almost February 2019. Like, yeah. What's on tap for you in 2019 and beyond?
Yeah, I mean, we're very excited about the raising capital and deploying capital and assets that we own. And that kind of brings all of our businesses together, right? And it gives us clarity on our purpose. So 2019 and beyond, we're just super stoked to continue to buy great assets that have solid returns for ourselves and our investors.
Cool. So let's do this because, all right, like I don't have nearly the experience you do, like in when you start talking about like especially commercial investments. I own one building, it's great, like, but it was like, hey, we like that building, we should run our business out of that building. Let's go buy it. It makes sense. So when you say like, hey, we're looking for great investment that has a great return, I don't need to know your secret sauce, your formula, but give us 2-3 of the things that are like key that like, hey, this actually might be a really good deal for me or for our fund in this case.
Yeah. So the number one is cash flow. Like, we want to know that cash flow is solid, that we're going to be able to cover any debt that we bring on, make sure we can return capital to investors. So cash flow consistency is really important. We like investing in assets that we feel have substantial upside appreciation without as much downside risk. So that's kind of how we try to position all of our investments. And the way we do that is we like to go into areas that are just right on the cusp of being highly desirable. So if you're in Tucson, our downtown is kind of taking off. And a lot of the markets right around our downtown have exploded. There's a few that haven't that we feel are right on the cusp. They're priced at a point where the downside is not nearly as substantial as some of the higher price areas around downtown. But if downtown keeps growing, they have the upside potential where we think we will reap a substantial gain. And so positioning is a big one. And then the one that we feel we're the best in the world at, and that's what we day in and day out strive to continue to improve on, is negotiating owner finance terms. The last couple of big deals that we've done, we've negotiated very, very beneficial owner finance terms that allow us to move into assets that we probably would be more challenging otherwise.
Now, when you talk about owner finance terms, I mean, now are these buildings and assets where the seller they're advertising that it's owner financing, or are you going in and just looking for you look for the asset and then you go, hey, by the way, is this on the table? And then you start working from there. What is that strategy like?
Yeah, I mean, it's a little bit of everything, right? Like some of the deals that we're picking up aren't even on the market. We're just having a conversation with an owner that we can tell that the asset is a headache for him. It's causing problems, but there's 100 different reasons why someone may want to do owner financing. And you have to just listen and figure out how you can deliver value. Taxes is a big one, right? Like a lot of people do not want to sell their assets because they don't want to get hit with the tax bill. Owner financing, that's one way to solve that problem. Another reason that someone may not want to sell is they like the cash flow. They're on fixed income, and so that cash flow is important. Well, you could do a 10-year owner finance deal where they still get consistent cash flow, but they don't have to deal with the day-to-day operations of the building. So they can move to Argentina. That's the one that we just picked up. That's what the seller wanted. I don't want to pay taxes, and I don't want to deal with my building. Awesome. Boy, do we have a solution for you. And so you're listening, you're providing value. It doesn't work all the time, but it's amazing when you start the conversation and if you know what their pain points are, how you can direct it towards that.
That's huge, man. That's a really good one. So, I mean, that's not much different. Like I'm putting on my real estate agent hat right now, and I'm thinking that's no different than when I'm listening for the motivation to why somebody needs to buy or sell, right? And I'm constantly telling the agents in our company or in our mastermind group, like, hey guys, when you find out why they're buying or selling, that will always determine when they do it. So let's focus on finding out why before we believe whatever when day they've told us, right? Because people will say, well, I'm going to sell this summer, after school's out, or when my lease expires was when I want to buy. Okay, that's great. But then let's find out why you're really doing it. And now we'll know the truth as to when it could possibly happen.
There's so much wisdom in that. So much wisdom.
Yeah, it sounds to me like it's the same. You're doing the same thing. You're listening and you're collecting information. I interviewed somebody recently on the podcast, and he's a negotiation expert. He studied negotiation from anybody and everybody that you can think of, and even teaches it specifically in the real estate world. And he's told me, like, listen, this is a game of information. This is about collecting information and then strategically using it.
Yeah. One of my favorite negotiation books is Never Split the Difference.
Yeah.
And that's a big part of that. It's finding the black swan. What is the information that either the other party doesn't want you to know or doesn't even know that it's material? And if you can pick up and find that, that's where the magic happens. That's where you as a real estate agent really earns your keep.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that. There's a mastermind group that I'm a part of that's non-real estate specific called Genius Network, and it's really cool because I like it because it's people from, you name it, probably 100 different industries, and a couple of these people have sold, either completely sold their business or sold big portions of it. Right? They've sold a big amount of equity, and one of the things I've learned is, the things that we think of as our business aren't always important to the buyer, or to the other party. And however, they hold a great deal of meaning to me. And a lot of times when we just look at things differently, like I don't, but let's say I had this, business around my brand and the podcast was a big piece of that, right? In my mind, the podcast for me is more like important because it's a labor of love. It's something I love doing. I like picking people's brains and learning. However, it might not mean that much to the buyer of the overall company, right? So I can maybe extract this, doesn't change their value, but for me, it gives me tremendous value. And now I see their offer differently.
An example of that I learned really early on. So when I started, I bought 6 houses within like a block of each other over a 2-year period. We've done 22 on the street up to date. Yeah, we transformed the whole neighborhood. But it was a neighborhood that had owned the properties. They had been in the family since the 30s and 40s, some in the 50s. And the emotional connection to those properties, if I walk in and go, man, this is a dump, I'll give you $50,000, I'm not getting the deal. If I walk in and I hear them and I realize the emotional connection and I say, we are going to develop this into a beautiful home. We're going to bring this back to what it was when your mom grew up in this house. Now I have an emotional relationship with them, and they're much more likely willing to do business with me. And that all comes from listening and understanding what their triggers, what their pain points are. And so that's just kind of another example of that in the real estate space.
That's solid, man. I think that that is so wise in just understanding who am I talking to, learning why they're doing things. It's that motivation piece and learning what's important to them. Like really great nugget you dropped there. All right, Ben. So here's the deal. I've got one more really important question I'm going to ask you because it's important. I ask everybody, all my
Okay.
guests, this exact same question. And then I also want to chat about first. You told me you're willing to you know, coaching is something. Obviously, you're a student and you get coached, and you're willing to. You're branching out this year and just trying to help other folks too, right?
Yeah.
And so you said potentially you might take, if someone needs some advice, wants to reach out to you about what it takes to become what you're doing or some part of what you're doing. Tell me more about that. Like I don't want to go
Yeah.
burden you with a bunch of free coaching calls or anything like that, but tell me about what it is you're looking to do and who's the right person that might want to reach out to you.
Yeah. So my passion is really helping people build wealth through real estate. And I think that that's the place that I can deliver a substantial amount of value into the world is helping people build up residual cash flow that allows them to do the things that they want to do, whatever their passion is. It's a lot easier to fulfill your and chase your dreams if you do not have to worry about monetary issues, right? So what I wanted to do for your audience, anybody who wants to schedule a call, they can fill out the information on apexaz.com/nextlevelagents. And I'm sure you can drop the link.
Yeah, totally.
They can schedule a 15-minute coaching call with me and we can go over anything that they want to talk about. I think if somebody's out there listening and they're like, man, I really want to dig deep on this one thing that they mentioned, I would love to have a conversation about that, or just general direction and guidance on how you go from 1 house to 5 houses to 20 houses and scale it up.
Awesome, man. I really appreciate that. That's cool. And for those of you listening who do want to dive deeper, trust me, I've been around Ben. I've chatted with him, been in the same room with him. He's typically the smartest guy in the room. He's got a lot of great information to share and could definitely help you on that path. So kind of in that light, man, I'm going to ask you this question because I asked this because it's important to me because somebody who's made an impact to my life asked this same question on his podcast. And it's from a guy named Dave Asprey. And he always asks his guests, like, hey, listen, somebody comes to you and they want advice on just doing better at life. Like, what are your top 3 pieces of advice for kicking more ass? Just in general, it could be business, personal, whatever that looks like. But what are the top 3 pieces of advice that you give somebody who's just looking to do better?
That's a great question. That's powerful. I think show up and work hard is underrated. It's so important and like really, really work hard. I'm talking, 80, 90 hours a week working and try to fit in school classes and just do it. So that would be one. That feeling you get in your gut when you know you need to do something, but you can make like 100 excuses why you shouldn't.
Oh yeah.
Okay. Very early, learn what that feels like. And when you get that feeling, do whatever it is that you're thinking that maybe you should do because you should do it. And so leaning into that is critical. When I was 16, I was driving down the street and I saw this guy building 5 new homes. And I got that feeling, oh, I don't want to stop and talk to him. I stopped and talked to him. A week later, I was sweeping floors. A month later, I was his administrative assistant. I was learning how to build new homes on a construction site. Like, if I don't stop, I don't know that my journey's the same. So find out what that feeling is and then stay tuned to it. Stay in tune with it. Lastly, remove limiting beliefs. You can do 100 times more than you think you can, and you have to surround yourself by people who show you that it's possible. It's great to sit here and go, I have no limiting beliefs, anything's possible. That's awesome. That's powerful. But until you're in the room with the guys who actually are doing that and believing that in the areas of life that you want to achieve, it's very difficult. So make sure you're in the room and you're doing everything you can to remove limiting beliefs. Those would be my 3.
That's awesome, and those are great pieces of advice. I'm a big fan too of like constantly reminding myself of how small I'm really thinking by just putting myself around people who are doing more. It's part of the reason why I have this podcast. I can interview people like you, can learn from people like you, Genius Networks, and whatever that thing is, right? My coaches. I should say, just get that reminder, not from so I beat myself up, but from a reminder that so much more is possible. So that way Like every day, I've got a friend, kind of friend and mentor. His name is Michael Burnoff, and Michael's always talking about like just what if you just get 1% better today, like the compound of that is huge.
Yep.
And so,
can I add one more? I want to go with 4. Is that all right?
Yeah, man. I like hey, man, one of my bonus guests recently, Roland Frazier, he's like, I'm a bonus guy. I'm going to give a 4th. I'm like,
all right, I'll be a bonus guy too. I think positive self-talk is critical. Something that changed my life. I don't know if it was a podcast or book. I wish I knew where I heard it, but it was like, you would never talk to other people the way that you talk to yourself in your head. At least a lot of people who have doubts and low self-worth and low self-love. And when I realized like what I was saying in my head was so much worse than I would ever say to anybody else, it really changed the relationship I had with myself, and the positivity has just doubled and tripled and quadrupled all aspects of my life. So I would strongly recommend focusing on that.
That's huge. A good friend of mine, Dustin Runyon, taught me something like that as well. I had him come in and speak to our company, and then had him on as a guest here recently a few months ago as well. And he said something to the effect, I'm totally paraphrasing here, but I'm sure I'll butcher it, but he said, would you be friends with you if one of your, like if you talk to you the way you talk to yourself? Essentially, if you had a friend that talked to you the way you talk to yourself, would you be friends with them? And the answer is probably not. And so as he would say, like, fucking knock it off. Like, stop doing that.
Yeah. No, it's changed so much of my life. So strongly recommend that.
That's awesome, man. Well, dude, I love that. So many golden nuggets in here. Again, guys, reach out to Ben. I will put the link in here. We'll make sure you have access to the PDF as well with the Flywheel of Success. And the thing is, I know about Ben is he's a giver. He wants to help people grow as well because it helps him grow. And so if you need something from him, reach out. And I know he'll be willing to contribute and help you out. So Ben, hats off to you, man. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me on. I hope everybody has an awesome day.
Awesome, man. Thanks a ton. I appreciate it.
Bye-bye.